That moment you see your work stamped with their name, your heart doesn't just sink, it hammers. Like a fist against your ribs. I stood there holding the proof, emails, timestamps, my code in their presentation, and realized playing nice got me robbed. So I didn't report them to HR. I didn't scream. I did something colder. Something that didn't just expose them. It destroyed them. And the whole office watched it burn. Hey, story lover. Welcome to the Narrative Hub, Reddit Stories. Believe me, this adventure gets wild, but it's only epic with you. Seriously, you make this possible. Want more stories? Greater adventure? Smash subscribe right now. Smash like. Comment below. Let's go. But let me back up. Because this story? It starts 6 months earlier, with what I thought was just another Tuesday at work. My name's irrelevant, but my job isn't. I'm a senior software developer at a mid-sized tech company, the kind of place where innovation meets corporate politics in the worst possible way. For 3 years, I'd been the quiet performer. The one management relied on but never really noticed. You know the type. Enter Daniel. Fresh out of his MBA program, armed with buzzwords and a smile that could sell ice to penguins. Daniel joined our team as a project coordinator, which, in corporate speak, means he was supposed to manage timelines while the rest of us did the actual work. At first, I actually liked the guy. He was enthusiastic, asked good questions, and seemed genuinely interested in learning. When he'd swing by my desk asking about code architecture or implementation strategies, I'd gladly explain. I even started sending him detailed project updates, thinking transparency would help our collaboration. Red flag number 1, I was being too helpful. The project that would change everything was called Phoenix, a complete overhaul of our customer data management system. It was massive, complex, and potentially career-defining. Our VP of engineering had made it clear, whoever delivered Phoenix successfully would be first in line for the upcoming senior architect position. I wanted that promotion. I'd earned it. For 2 months, I lived and breathed Phoenix. 60-hour weeks became my norm. I'd arrive before sunrise, stay past midnight, and dream in code. The system I was building wasn't just functional, it was elegant. Clean architecture, optimized performance, and innovative solutions to problems our company had struggled with for years. Daniel was always around, asking questions, taking notes, requesting updates. Just want to make sure I can properly communicate our progress to leadership, he'd say. Seemed reasonable. I'd send him everything: technical specifications, progress reports, code snippets, even my personal observations about potential challenges and solutions. I documented my work obsessively: timestamps, version controls, detailed commit messages. It was my natural process, but it would later become my salvation. The first crack in Daniel's facade appeared during a team meeting in month 3. Our director asked about a particularly complex database optimization I'd developed. Before I could answer, Daniel jumped in. That was actually my suggestion, he said smoothly. I noticed the query performance issues and recommended the caching layer approach. I stared at him. The caching layer had taken me 2 weeks to design and implement. I'd literally shown him the code the day before, explaining how it worked. But he was sitting there, nodding confidently as our director praised his innovative thinking. I should have spoken up. Instead, I told myself it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he'd just misspoken. Red flag number 2, I was making excuses for him. Over the next month, it happened again. And again. Small contributions I'd made would somehow become Daniel's ideas in meetings. Code solutions I developed would be attributed to his strategic oversight. My detailed technical explanations would be repackaged as his high-level vision. Each time, I'd feel that familiar heart hammer. Each time, I'd tell myself to let it slide. I was focused on the work, not the credit. The project mattered more than my ego. But Daniel was getting bolder. He started scheduling one-on-one meetings with our director, positioning himself as the technical lead on Phoenix. Meanwhile, my role was being subtly reframed as implementation support. The breaking point came during a company-wide presentation. Phoenix was nearing completion, and our director wanted to showcase our progress to the executive team. I'd prepared a comprehensive presentation, technical architecture, performance metrics, implementation timeline, everything. The morning of the presentation, Daniel sent me a message. "Don't worry about the presentation today. I've got it covered. Thanks for all your hard work on implementation." Implementation. Like I was some junior developer executing his vision. I watched from the back of the conference room as Daniel presented MY work to the CEO, CTO, and board members. He used my slides, my diagrams, my performance data. When the CEO asked about the innovative database design, Daniel explained it with the same words I'd used to teach him just weeks earlier. The presentation was flawless. It had to be. I'd created every slide. At the end, the CEO stood up and shook Daniel's hand. "Outstanding work. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need more of." That's when I made my decision. Playing nice had gotten me robbed. It was time to play smart. I didn't go to HR. I didn't confront Daniel. I didn't even let my anger show. Instead, I went home, opened my laptop, and began building something far more devastating than code: a timeline of theft. Every email I'd sent Daniel, every document I'd shared, every timestamp showing when I'd completed work versus when he'd claimed credit for it, version control logs showing my code commits, screenshots of my presentations, voice recordings from meetings where he'd taken credit for my ideas. I had everything, but I needed more than evidence. I needed strategy. The beautiful thing about corporate theft is that thieves get greedy. They can't help themselves. Daniel had gotten away with stealing credit for individual contributions, so naturally, he'd go bigger. I just had to wait for him to hang himself with his own ambition. I started being even more helpful. When Daniel asked for project documentation, I'd send comprehensive files, but with subtle digital fingerprints only I would recognize. When he requested code explanations, I'd provide detailed breakdowns while secretly recording our conversations. I also started CCing people on emails. Not obviously, just adding names here and there. Keeping Lillian in the loop since this affects her team too. Adding Tom since he might have insights on this approach. Slowly, quietly, I was building an audience for what was coming. 2 weeks after the board presentation, our director announced that Phoenix had been such a success that Daniel would be leading the next major project and would likely be promoted to senior architect within the month. I smiled and congratulated him. Inside, I was setting the final pieces of my trap. The next project was called Aurora, a complete redesign of our user interface system. Bigger than Phoenix, more visible, and with even higher stakes. Daniel was now the official lead, which meant he'd need to produce original work under intense scrutiny. But Daniel had a problem. He didn't actually know how to do the job he'd stolen. He'd been coasting on my work for months, and now he was expected to perform at a senior level. So he did what thieves do: he tried to steal again. Daniel started asking me for consultation on Aurora. Could I review his technical approach? Could I provide some code samples? Could I help him work through some complex problems? This time, I was ready. Every document I gave him contained embedded metadata proving I was the author. Every piece of code included subtle signatures that would be impossible to explain away. Every consultation session was recorded. Every email was carefully crafted to establish a paper trail. But the masterstroke was something Daniel would never see coming. I started making deliberate mistakes. Not big mistakes, nothing that would harm the actual project, but subtle technical choices that would seem reasonable to someone who didn't fully understand the underlying systems. Code that would work in demonstration but fail under real-world load. Architecture decisions that would create problems down the line. I was giving Daniel enough rope to hang himself, and he was eagerly tying the noose. 3 months into Aurora, the problems started surfacing. Performance issues, scalability concerns, integration failures. The kind of problems that would be obvious to an experienced architect but might slip past someone who was just copying solutions they didn't understand. Daniel panicked. He started reaching out more frequently, asking for help fixing issues he couldn't diagnose. Each request was another piece of evidence that he was operating beyond his competence level. But the real trigger came when our CEO announced an upcoming board meeting where Aurora would be presented to potential investors. The stakes couldn't be higher. This presentation could secure funding for the next 2 years. Daniel was terrified. He knew the system had problems, but he didn't understand them well enough to fix them. So he made a desperate decision. He asked me to fix everything and let him present the solutions as his own work. The email was perfect. I need your help getting Aurora ready for the investor presentation. I trust your implementation skills to fix these performance issues. Of course, I'll make sure you get appropriate recognition. Appropriate recognition. From the man who'd stolen 6 months of my work. I fixed everything, of course. But I also did something else. I prepared 2 versions of the presentation. The first version was what Daniel expected, clean, polished, showcasing all the improvements I'd made. The second version was something special, a detailed analysis of every problem in the original Aurora system, with timestamps showing exactly when each issue was introduced and documentation proving that all the solutions came from me. I sent Daniel the first version. The second version got a different audience. The investor presentation was scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. On Wednesday at 5 p.m., I sent a single email to our CEO, CTO, and VP of Engineering. The subject line was simple: Aurora Project, Technical Analysis and Documentation. The email contained everything: the complete timeline of Daniel's theft, the evidence showing how he'd taken credit for Phoenix, the recordings of him asking me to fix Aurora problems he couldn't understand, the code analysis proving he'd been presenting my work as his own for months. But the crown jewel was the Aurora comparison, a side-by-side analysis showing the problems in Daniel's original system versus the solutions I'd provided, complete with metadata proving authorship and timestamps showing the real timeline of development. I ended the email with a simple statement: I believe the board deserves to know who actually built the systems they're investing in. I sent the email at 5:17 p.m. on Wednesday. The investor presentation was scheduled for 2 p.m. Thursday. Daniel would have less than 20 hours to realize his world was about to end. Thursday morning, I arrived at work early. The office felt different, charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. Word travels fast in corporate environments, and I could tell something big was happening. At 10 a.m., Daniel was called into a meeting with our director and HR. He never came back to his desk. At 11:30 a.m., our CEO sent a company-wide email announcing that the Aurora presentation had been rescheduled and that there would be some changes to project leadership. At 2 p.m., I found myself in the same conference room where Daniel had stolen credit for Phoenix. But this time, I was the one presenting to investors. This time, my name was on the slides. The presentation went flawlessly. Not because I was a great presenter, but because I actually understood every line of code, every architectural decision, every technical choice. When investors asked detailed questions, I could answer them. When they wanted to see specific implementations, I could walk them through my thinking. At the end, the CEO announced that we'd secured the funding. He also announced that I'd been promoted to senior architect, effective immediately. Daniel's termination was officially for misrepresentation of contributions and violation of company intellectual property policies. Unofficially, it was because he'd tried to steal from someone who documented everything and played the long game. The real lesson here isn't about revenge, it's about documentation and patience. In any workplace, your work should speak for itself, but you need to make sure it can actually speak. Version control, Email trails, meeting notes, recorded conversations. These aren't just good practices, they're your insurance policy. But there's a deeper lesson too. Thieves always get greedy. Daniel could have taken partial credit and probably gotten away with it. Instead, he took everything and put himself in a position where he had to perform at a level beyond his abilities. His greed became his downfall. 6 months later, I'm leading a team of 12 developers on the most challenging project our company has ever attempted. The promotion I deserved finally happened, and I'm building systems that will define our company's future for years to come. Daniel? I heard he landed at a startup across town. I wonder if they know his real track record. The Aurora system I built is now processing millions of transactions daily, with 99.99% uptime and performance metrics that exceed every projection. When new team members ask about the architecture, I can explain every decision because I made every decision. That's the difference between building something and stealing it. When you build it, you own not just the code, but the knowledge, the understanding, the ability to improve, adapt, and innovate. Thieves can copy your work, but they can't copy your competence. And in the end, competence always wins. The sweetest part of this whole story isn't that Daniel got fired. It's not even that I got promoted. The sweetest part is that I never had to become the villain in my own story. I didn't scream, didn't cause drama, didn't burn bridges. I just documented the truth and let the truth speak for itself. When the dust settled, everyone knew who had really built the systems our company depended on. That's real power, not the ability to destroy someone else, but the ability to let your own work shine so brightly that lies can't hide in its shadow. Daniel thought he could steal my work and steal my future. What he actually did was teach me the most valuable lesson of my career. In a world full of people trying to take credit for what you've built, the best revenge is building something so undeniably yours that theft becomes impossible. Today, when someone asks who built Aurora, there's only one answer. Not because I destroyed the thief, but because I let my work speak louder than his lies. And that's a victory that no one can ever steal. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more workplace survival stories. And remember, document everything, trust carefully, and never let anyone else claim credit for what you've built. Your work deserves to have your name on it.